Hello and welcome back to J.P.'s World of Wrestling. I am your man, J.P. Now, last time I went on my 1995 WWF rant. But today, I'm just going to talk to you about my memories of playing with wrestling figures. Now, when I say wrestling figures, I'm referring to either the Hasbro or the Galoob figures. Now, some of you have commented that you didn't like to mix your Galoob and Hasbro figures. You didn't like to mix your WWF figures with your WCW figures. And if that's how you played, if you couldn't see using the two together, man, that's fine. But I didn't have that problem. I was okay with using Hasbro's and Galoob's together. I just, they're the same height, they're the same, I didn't have an issue with it. But, so when it all started was, I think it was 1991, or it might have been even late 90, but I think it was 91. I got my first Hasbro ring. Now, like I said on this channel before, I got my ring before I got any wrestlers. So when I got my ring, the only action figures I had was a Casey Jones Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle figure, and then I had a couple of Dick Tracy figures. And I had a couple of generic pirate action figures. So I would have matches with those figures. I didn't care. WWF had all these other characters anyway. Why not pirates and Ninja Turtle Casey Jones characters and mobsters? Why not? So I would use those. So then the first actual Hasbro that I got was Jake the Snake Roberts. Then immediately following that, I got the Big Boss Man. So then my collection started to grow over time, and eventually I got like Hulk Hogan #1 and Hasbro, and I got Brutus the Barber Beefcake and the Ultimate Warrior, and eventually I got Tatanka. And like as the series would come out with new figures, me and Joe would head out to Toys R Us, and we'd look for figures. Now, one of the times we went to Toys R Us, we went to Toys R Us, and all the wrestlers they had on the shelf were ones that we already had. Either he had them or I had them. So we actually went to one of the salesmen or the clerks that worked there, and we said, "Hey, do you have any more figures in the back that we could look through? We already have all these." And he, without hesitation, he said, "Oh yeah, sure." He goes in the back, he brings out this whole brand new box of WWF Hasbro wrestlers, and Joe and I sifted through them. He walked out with 5 wrestlers. I think I walked out with like 2. So, yeah, that was fun. But getting back to when I first started playing with wrestling figures, my family lived in this house in Portland. Now, the house itself was like right off this really busy street in Portland. So, it was kind of a dangerous house for little kids to live in, but at this point, we were all old enough to know you don't start out in the middle of the street. But being the only boy in my family had its advantages. And one of the advantages was, in this particular house, my bedroom was kind of off to the side through the garage. Like it was separate from the rest of the house. I mean, it was still connected to the house, but it was separate. Like in order to get to it, you had to go through the garage, straight back, and there was this door, and then there was my room. The only thing is, my bedroom door had kind of a glass window on it, so I didn't really get the privacy. But being as how it was through the garage, nobody ever was out there anyway. But it was by far the biggest room in the house, so I had a lot of room to spread out in this bedroom. And on the back wall was a glass sliding door that led into the backyard. We had kind of a big backyard too. So I had a lot of privacy out there. And I would set my ring literally in the middle of the room. And I would have matches. And like I said, I would use Dick Tracy action figures. I would use generic pirate figures. I would use Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle figures. I didn't care. Because I had the ring. Now this technically is not the Hasbro ring. This is technically a Mattel retro ring, but it's the same idea. But I had a lot of really distinct memories of having like dream matches with Sting and Hogan, or Sting and Hogan as a tag team against Ric Flair and Arn Anderson. Now at the time, this was really unheard of because this was before Hulk Hogan had went to WCW. This is years before that. So if you wanted to see a Hogan Sting match, you know, this was the way to do it. This was the only way to do it. And, you know, I honestly, I didn't have an issue with wrestling with these two figure lines together. So, I mean, that's just me. A lot of you, you know, like, no, it has to be WCW, and then it has to be WWE Hasbro. So, I mean, that's fine. I mean, had I collected AWA figures, I probably would have used them with He-Man figures. I probably would have brought in He-Man characters into the AWA, but I don't know, that's just me. And I remember distinctly, this was the house that we were living in when my mother came in with an unopened Arn Anderson Galoob figure. And it was a pleasant surprise because I'm like, whoa, you know, my mom's bringing the heat or whatever. She bought me a wrestling figure. She's like, here, I was supposed to give you this, I believe it was for your birthday. I said, oh, okay, cool. And I actually had been wanting Arn Anderson. I saw it in the store where I usually got my wrestlers. I'm like, ooh, there's Arn Anderson. That'd be cool to have. And so at this point, you know, I knew of WCW. I had been watching it for a couple years, and I did like WCW. Not as much as the WWF, but I did like WCW, and I did like watching it. So, and I did like Arn Anderson. So my mom brought it in, and, you know, bless her heart, you know, she's like, oh yeah, I knew this one that you wanted, but she didn't really. My mom just says stuff, but I love her. Love you, Mom. But but yeah, it's Hasbro's and Galoob's and any other action figure that I could get my hands on that I could use as a wrestler that was the same size as this ring. I also, actually, now that I think about it, I also had like this kind of bigger like sumo wrestler. I believe it was from the Chuck Norris toy line. I think it was from the Chuck Norris action figure toy line, and it was bigger than all the Hasbro's. But said it was like this giant sumo wrestler that hardly anybody could beat because he was just this giant sumo wrestler. I don't know, but anyway, fond memories. I mean, I had storylines going. You know, I wasn't that creative, so I did sort of in your houses matches thrown together. Oh, suddenly now I hate you, Hulk Hogan, or whatever, you know. But I believe I did have a Ric Flair Hogan feud, but because my Hogan was the first Hogan Hasbro with the open hands, I didn't really do much with that. But it was the only Hogan I had, so I had to use it. I had to use my imagination. I pretend that he punched like this with palm strike. But anyway, I loved playing with wrestling figures as a kid, and nothing brought me more joy than that. And later on, you know, with me and Joe, you know, we got creative with it. We both upholstered our rings to different color schemes, and like he would be like the East Wing Arena, I would be the West Wing Arena, and we would call over the phone. We would have matches sort of over the phone, and you know, it was a fun time. It was a great time to be a kid, and I loved it. So I want to know, you know, what are some of your memories of playing with wrestlers, playing with Hasbro's? Leave them in the comments below. And that'll conclude this video. So if you're new here, Go ahead and like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you next time.